Salvation Army uniform has always been more than just an outfit that Salvationists wear. It's always been something about wearing a promise, but it was met with some disdain.
There was opposition to the Salvation Army from local interests, and the scale of some of the opposition is enormous.
The uniform is our symbol, a symbol of compassion and love, and a symbol of Christ's presence in the world. Especially the mid-19th century, you have a lot of folks moving from the countryside into urban centers, and you get a situation where you have too many people for the number of jobs.
The sanitation was very poor, disease was common, working conditions were often horrific, unsafe, poorly paid. By the middle of the 19th century, East London had become a synonym for this kind of urban poverty, a kind of social immorality, a moral laxity.
Darwinism is gaining increased popularity, as well as social Darwinism. This idea that a class that is the financial foundation of the country is better fit for survival. If you accept that as justification for your wealth, that also means that people who are poor are unfit. And so it gives a new justification to why people should be in certain places within society. Now, at the same time that's happening, you see the church kind of retreating. And so people are increasingly needing a church that goes outside its walls, but you have a church that's increasingly retreating within its walls.
In response, the Salvation Army begins in the 1860s in the East End of London, and it really is very distinct from other religious denominations at the time. There's an appeal made to a kind of urban working class audience, two groups of people that would not seem to be being reached by the established churches, and the Salvation Army evolves a series of kind of methods and techniques and a sort of style that's very different from what other churches look like. It's going to be almost a literal invasion. They're going to make a noise, and people are encouraged to just start preaching in the street. Don't wait till you've got an audience, just stand in the town square and start preaching.
The open air meetings, they were about attracting people with the noise.
And the Salvation Army is seen as quite a vulgar working class thing.
They were happy to be considered as disreputable. They were happy to be considered trouble causers.
Their tactics and their language and their quite kind of anarchic style was very different from what those people knew of religion.
There was pushback, mostly from other churches.
The style and the content and the location of the preaching is being attacked from kind of all sides, really. The 1870s is a time where the British Army is really popular. There's a lot of the army in the culture.
War is seen in a much more positive light. And there's this idea of we are at war with sin. We're at war with the ills of society. We're going to be at war against the things that cause oppression. And so as that terminology starts and people start using ranks and flags, eventually we start seeing uniforms.
The uniform, while it emerges almost organically, it certainly almost immediately serves a whole range of actual useful purposes. It makes Salvation Army members identifiable to other people.
It becomes this symbol of membership, that I'm part of something bigger than myself.
They're all wearing the same uniform in the same meetings, and it is an absolute leveller.
Our uniform was just this equality, this simplicity, and this practicality all rolled into one.
But it's also clear that this was seen as being a bit weird. The fact that people were dressed as soldiers, people wearing military uniform, especially women wearing military uniform.
In the East End of London, women were very much subordinate. They would be valued by how well they had married. They would be valued by whose family they were connected to.
Certainly for women, being able to wear a uniform that identified you as being a Salvationist gave women a kind of armour, and it could allow them to go into places where normal single women, or even groups of women, wouldn't be allowed to go. In slum areas, in parts of kind of East London, where there would be questions about a woman's morality if she was seen by herself, it gave women a kind of authority, and it meant they could sort of slightly transcend the limits of Victorian expectations.
The army had kind of ramped up their open air, specifically in front of pubs. As you're going in, you're hearing these preachers talking about the detrimental effects of alcohol and alcoholism. The owners of these places started seeing their faithful clientele disappear.
People were not going to the pub anymore to get drunk. They were not going and gambling. They were not getting involved in prostitution. They were literally turning their lives around, and the uniform marked them out as different.
You have groups like the skeleton army develop, which are basically bar toughs that are paid by the bar owners to go out and disrupt those meetings.
Local people begin to violently attack the Salvation Army. They have banners with some skeleton imagery on it. In some cases it is also backed by local publicans, backed by local magistrates who are supporting these people who are violently attacking Salvationists. You get skeleton armies eventually over the whole of the UK. And as the 1880s progress, this opposition becomes more fervent, becomes bigger. There's a huge spectrum of violence against Salvationists. Officers are punched, stamped on, trampled. It's right up to large-scale mob violence.
Which is one of the reasons the women wore bonnets, straw bonnets, because they could withstand the ammo that was coming their way, which is mostly rocks.
The scale of some of the opposition is enormous, thousands of people, which is almost difficult to believe. During this period of opposition, the Salvation Army expanded numerically, and as that social work expands, people, particularly in the establishment, began to see the Salvation Army actually has a positive force. It's seen as being less of a threat. The Salvation Army is harnessing forces which are on the ascendant historically, a sort of evangelical revival, the beginnings of a kind of social work, whereas the Skeleton Army is kind of the remnant of the power of local elites, that those forces are on the descendant. A lot of the people behind the violence had come to realise that it wasn't working, it was counterproductive.
As the Salvation Army became more respectable and more understood, the uniform started to morph a little bit, and I think therein lies its value, is that it can be adaptable. Wherever you go, there is a different style of uniform that's appropriate for that culture. The future of the Salvation Army uniform is to keep being adaptable, keep being flexible with it, but keep wearing it, because we're wearing a promise.
The uniform still carries with it a lot of symbolism, and it is connected with the ministry being done by those who wear the uniform. So as long as that ministry continues to be impactful in our communities and in people's lives, I think the uniform will stay.
If you enjoyed this video, like it and share it. We are always posting content, so don't forget to subscribe. Thank you for helping us share change.